have a very special event ahead of us. We have the acclaimed master of the short story with us tonight, Richard Bausch. I'm Candice Yacono, and I don't know if I'll be moderating so much as cruise directing, but let's see what we have. So first off, I wanted to introduce Richard. His works have appeared in publications such as the Atlantic Monthly, Esquire, GQ, Harper's, New Letters, very recently, congratulations, The New Yorker, Narrative, Playboy, and Plowshares, among others, and they have been widely anthologized. He's the author of 13 novels, I believe, and 9 collections of short stories, including the novels Violence, Rebel Powers, In the Night Season, gosh, there's so many. Hello to the Cannibals, Thanksgiving Night, Peace, Before, During, and After, and most recently, Playhouse. His 10th volume of stories, The Fate of Others, will be published next summer, so set your Amazon wish list up. 3 full-length motion pictures have also been made from his work. He's won 2 National Magazine Awards, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and countless other awards and accolades. He's been with the writing program faculty at Chapman University since 2012, and there he also leads a free community writing workshop in which he personally reads all submitted manuscripts and hand selects 10 participants each year. So please make a mental note to apply next summer. We're going to start with oral presentations by Saddleback's theater department from 2 of Richard's short stories. So first off, our first oral presentation features an excerpt from the short story, Aren't You Happy for Me? The story focuses on a phone conversation between John Ballinger and his daughter, Melanie, who reveals surprising details. During the conversation, John is preoccupied with marital tensions as revealed in the narrative. But for the purposes of this presentation, we'll focus only on the dialogue as an example of Richard's skillful handling of a tension-filled exchange. Bruce Gilman portrays John, and Amber Fuller portrays the role of Melanie.
William Combs with 2 O's, pronounced just like the thing you comb your hair with. Say it.
Combs.
Say the whole name.
I've got it, sweetheart. Why am I saying it?
Dad, I'm bringing him home with me. We're getting married. Dad, did you hear me?
I'm here.
Well, Dad?
Yes, that's some news.
That's all you can say?
Well, I mean, Melanie, this is sort of quick, isn't it?
Not that quick. How long did you and Mom wait?
I don't remember. Are you measuring yourself by that?
You waited 6 months, and you do too, remember. And this is 5 months, and we're not measuring anything. William and I have known each other longer than 5 months, but we've been together, you know, as a couple, 5 months, and I'm already 23, which is 2 years older than Mom was. And don't tell me it was different when you guys did it.
No, it's pretty much the same, I imagine.
Well,
I'm very happy for you.
you don't sound happy.
I'm happy. I can't wait to meet him.
Really? Promise? You're not just saying that?
It's good news, darling. I mean, I'm surprised, of course. It'll take a little bit of getting used to. The suddenness of it and everything. I mean, your mother and I didn't even know you were seeing anyone, Melanie. But no, I'm glad. I can't wait to meet the young man.
Well, and now there's something else you have to know.
I'm ready.
Well, this one's kind of hard. Maybe we should talk about it later.
No, I'm sure I can take whatever it is.
I don't know. See, Daddy, God, I can't find the way to say it, really. Dad?
Honey, I'm listening.
Okay, look, will you promise you won't react?
How can I promise a thing like that, Melanie?
You're going to react then. I wish you can just promise me you wouldn't.
Darling, I've got something to tell you too. Promise me you won't react.
Promise.
So, now, tell me whatever it is. Melanie, you're not pregnant, are you?
How did you know?
Oh, Lord, seriously?
Jeez, wow, that's really amazing.
You're pregnant?
Right, my God, you're positively clairvoyant, Dad.
I really don't think it's a matter of any clairvoyance, Melanie, from the way you were talking. Is it sure?
Of course it's sure. But, well, that isn't really the hard thing. Maybe I should just wait.
Wait? Wait for what?
Until you get used to everything else. I don't know.
Honey, do you want me to put your mother on?
No, Daddy. I wanted to talk to you about this first. I think we should get it over with.
Get this over with? Melanie, what are we talking about here? Maybe I should put your mother on. After all, I've never been pregnant.
It's not about being pregnant. You guessed that. Are you ready?
Wait a minute. Okay, tell me.
William's somewhat older than I am. There.
That's it?
Well, it's how much?
Okay.
This is even tougher than I thought it was going to be.
You mean you're going to tell me something harder than the fact that you're pregnant?
I didn't expect you to be this way about it.
Honey, please just tell me the rest of it.
Well, did you mean what you said anyways?
Melanie, you said this would be hard. Tell me, sweetie, please.
I'm going to. Dad, William's 60. He's 63 years old. Did you hear me, Daddy? It's perfectly all right, too, because he's a really young 63 and very strong and healthy. And look at George Burns.
George Burns? George Burns? Melanie, I don't understand.
Come on, Daddy, stop it.
No, what are you telling me?
I said William is 63.
William who?
Dad, my fiance.
Wait, Melanie, you're saying your fiancé, the man you're going to marry, he's 63?
A young 63.
Melanie, 63?
Dad.
You didn't say 6 feet 3? Melanie?
Yes.
Honey, this is a joke, right? You're playing a joke on me.
It's not that. God, I don't believe this.
You don't believe. You don't believe.
Dad, I told you.
Melanie, talk into the phone.
I know it's hard. I know it's asking you a lot to take in.
Well, no. It's a little more than that, Melanie, isn't it? I mean, it's not like a weather report, is it?
I should have known.
Forgive me for it, but I have to ask you something.
It's all right, Daddy. I know what I'm doing. I'm not really rushing into anything.
Well, good God, somebody rushed into something, right?
Daddy.
Is that what you call him? No, I'm Daddy. You have to call him Granddaddy.
That is not funny.
I wasn't being funny, Melanie. And anyway, that wasn't my question. Please forgive this, but I have to know.
There's nothing you really have to know, Daddy. I'm an adult, and I'm telling you out of family courtesy.
I understand that. Family courtesy, exactly. Exactly, Melanie. That's a good phrase. Would you please tell me, out of family courtesy, if the baby is his?
Yes.
I'm sorry for the question, but I have to put all this together. I mean, you're asking me to take in a whole lot, you know?
I said I understand how you feel.
I don't think so. I don't think you quite understand how I feel.
All right, I don't understand how you feel, but I think I knew how you'd react.
So good. The second oral presentation focuses on an excerpt from Luck, a first-person narrative with dialogue from the perspective of a young man reflecting on his flawed father, with whom he is painting a house. Bruce Gilman will play the role of the father, and Aidan Vochoska will portray the son.
I came back in no time with the burgers, and when he reached into the bag, I smelled it on him. I didn't say anything. He got his burger and opened it, talking goofy like he does.
Best car ever made was the Studebaker, Baker.
Right, Dwight, I said, but my heart wasn't in it. He sat on the stairs, and I sat in the window seat of this place. We've got the walls and the first coat of trim. there was a lot of touch-up to do. And if he was going to start drinking, it wasn't going to get done. Outside, we still had the porch railing. It was a big wraparound porch. 2 days' work at least, with both of us pushing it. Dad, he was chewing, shaking his head. He liked the hamburger. All his life, I think he enjoyed things more than other people.
Man.
It was getting dark. We still had to finish the trim in the dining room, the chair railing. Well, I was watching his eyes.
You know, I do good work. Don't I do good work?
The finest.
And you help me.
I concentrated on my food. I could have maybe figured I'd made a mistake until now, but this was the way he talked whenever he was on the stuff. I started looking around casually for where he could hide it.
And you're a good son.
I might have nodded. I was eating that hamburger and trying not to show anything to him.
20 years ago, I painted my first house. Helped a friend one summer. I told you this. Never dreamed I'd have a son to help me. You ought to be in college, son, but I'm just as glad you're here.
It was like he might start crying. Best get back to work. He was sitting there thinking. I knew what he was seeing in his mind.
Your mother sure can pick them. I don't know what she saw in me.
I stood. I had what was left of my burger in my hand. I put it in the bag and went over to the paint can.
Hey,
Hey,
I said, I don't know what she saw in me.
me either.
Good thing you look like her.
Right, Dwight?
That's the truth, Ruth.
You want me to do the second coat in here?
Nah, get the dining room.
Okay.
Hey, what if I take you and your mother out to dinner tonight?
That'd be all right.
Okay, you're on.
Great. It was getting dark. We'd been eating burgers.
You think she'll feel like going out?
Got me.
She's been staying in the house too much, working too hard. There's no need for her to put so much time in every day, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and you've been working hard too.
Yes, sir.
You think we did a good job so far?
He looked around at everything. I did the same. I saw that over the kitchen cabinets, where he'd been painting when I left to get the burgers, it was going to need a lot of touching up. There was places he'd missed. He'd been hurrying it. You couldn't mistake a thing like that. Back before he was too bad, when I was small, he would point out where other painters had cut corners and he didn't. He'd show me the places where he'd taken the extra steps and done it right. He was teaching me.
Do a thing, boy. You do it right the first time. You take pride in what you do. You go that extra mile. You take pains. People remember good work. People remember excellence.
And when I worked with him summers and he was okay, he'd do a thing, put the last touch on something, and he'd stand back and look at it, proud as hell.
New money.
New money. You could hear the satisfaction in the way he breathed, looking at what he'd done. That was when he was okay.
Little touch-up over the sink.
I didn't answer.
Well, I better get off to the bank before they close the drive-in window.
The bank.
The bank, Frank.
I just stared at him. For a long time, we were like that, staring at each other from opposite sides of the room, with the tarpaulin and the paint cans between us, like we were listening for some sound.
How am I going to take you guys out to eat without some money, honey?
Oh, right.
You go ahead and finish what you can in the dining room. We straight?
Straight. It was what he always said when he had to punish me. And he'd come in afterward and explain the punishment. We'd been saying it like a joke between us since I was 16.
Sure?
Very, Jerry.
I'll be back, Jack.
Okay. I watched him get out of his coveralls because I thought it might fall out of one of his pockets. He laid them across the kitchen counter and then smoothed his hair back with both hands and looked at me.
Don't bust yourself. We did enough for one day.
Right. I knew what would happen now. He went into the bathroom and flushed the toilet. When he came out, he went to the door and got himself through it quick, calling back to me that he'd be 5 minutes. I stood by the front window, watched him get into the truck. He wouldn't be back tonight. He wouldn't be back for days, maybe a week. Then we'd get the call. We'd go get him. He'd be in the hospital again, going through the treatment. This is all stuff you know. You don't need me to paint the picture.
Thank you, that was wonderful. And now, if I don't, upset him too much, Richard will read from his short story, Veterans Night, from his collection, Living in the Weather of the World.
This is called Veterans Night, and it should be said like that, the way we say Veterans Day. This is Veterans Night. Just past midnight, when it looked like things might get out of hand, Greer brought out the baseball bat he kept under the bar and, holding it cocked, edged toward the tall red-haired punk with the bad mouth and his two jerk friends. "Time to go home, boys," he said. "You better think, man," the redhead said. "You think, while you still got something to think with." The redhead and the two men with him backed out slowly. Greer watched them go, then closed the doors and locked everything up. He let his young friends Hines and Trent stay. They drank cognac, slow, for hours. Greer had a small stash of cocaine, too, that he had stolen from his ex-girlfriend, who kept coming around trying to make up. But she was always toasted and dull, he said, and though he wasn't interested in that life anymore, he didn't want her to get in more trouble than was already her lot in life. That was how Greer expressed himself. Phrases like lot in life and talking about fate and karma. He also used a kind of oral italics. "That girl is fucked up," he said. "I don't know what she thinks I can give her." He drank the cognac with them after the door was shut, and finally he brought out the Florida Snow. They offset the cognac they had been drinking with that. "We'll get sober artificially," Greer said. "Clear our sinus cavities," said Hines, who reached into his coat pocket and stopped. "Damn," he said, low. "What?" Trent asked. "Nothing." Hines turned to Greer. "Glad you didn't have to use the bat." "Man's a true friend," said Trent, lifting his glass. "Trash like that," Greer said, "never had to face anything. Spoiled bunch of materialistic shits. I'd have used the bat, too. I'd have hit a couple home runs on their asses, and they knew it, too." Hines held up his glass. "To all the owners of baseball bats and all the veterans of foreign wars." "To us and those like us," Greer pronounced. He was old enough to be their father, and they liked him and looked up to him. Trent even tried sometimes to ape the way he talked. He had taken to using the word karma. Greer smiled whenever he heard him use it. He let them stay until the pre-dawn. He cleaned the place up around them and wouldn't let them do anything to help. When the coke was exhausted, they each milked one more drink and had a coffee. Greer laughing about the look on the redhead punk's face when the baseball bat came into play. He got into a coughing fit and felt woozy. They had to help him into the bathroom, but when he came out, he said he was fine. "Well, time to close," he said. Hines and Trent wanted to pay for the cognac or sign for it, but he wouldn't hear of it. He saw them out of the place into the cold. Several times he'd remarked that he hadn't done cocaine or cognac for years, and they were both worried about his bad heart, especially Hines. "Quit worrying, Tommy," Greer said. "I'm golden." "Come on with us," said Hines. They lived close. "Yeah," Trent said. "We've got a little whiskey, too." Greer waved them off. "I got enough whiskey in here to wash a car. Are you kidding? I could fill a gas truck with it. Gotta close up. Still some things to do." "I'm fine. I'll walk home. You guys go ahead." "We'll walk you," Tommy Hines offered. "Nah, go on." There were only the lamps up and down the long street, both ways looking less bright in the grayness. They stood They stood for a few moments as if confused about which direction to take. It was very cold, and there was a breeze that made it worse. They stamped and wrapped their arms around themselves, and Hines tried to light a cigarette with a match, but the matches wouldn't stay lit. Trent ended up doing it with his lighter. They shared the cigarette. They called themselves brothers in arms. They had both served in Iraq and had come home to Memphis within a month of each other. Trent had been in the infantry. Hines had been assigned to the mail dispatch outfit in Baghdad. Trent was wounded by ambush, Hines by an insurgent bomb. Now they were no longer under the protection of Uncle, as Trent expressed it. They had been discharged with what were called healed wounds, and they had lost any idea of what to do with themselves. They had a little payment each month for their service to the country, but it was not enough to live on. Things were as bad as they could be, really, for both of them. No family to speak of, nobody much they felt any attachment to. They had a small apartment together in Midtown, $500 a month. Trent had a job taking deliveries for Buster's Wine and Liquor. Hines was between jobs, which was a source of tension. There had been episodes, heavy drinking, drunk driving, and petty theft. He had spent some time in the city jail. Trent was overprotective, and in fact, the ruckus in Greer's was about that, the tall, red-headed punk getting specific about someone not making a salary and living off the land. The tall punk had dealings with Hines, had dealings with Hines before deployment, and he considered Hines a poor risk for loaning money. He was very loud expressing this. He had been looking for Hines. Trent understood Hines's trouble and was sensitive about it. He wouldn't brook criticism of his friend and brother. He had a hold of the red-headed punk's shirt, and then the two who were with the punk stepped in, pulling Trent back and holding him, and that's when Greer brought out the baseball bat. Hines and Trent were regulars, and the punk was somebody off the street. That was how Greer expressed it, but they knew he was only trying to preserve his air of hard-bitten toughness. Greer was a good man. One of the best, Hines said now, as if they had been talking about it. I think he'd have killed that guy, said Trent. They walked with the difficulty to which they were fairly accustomed up to the top of the street and stood there. The ruin of what used to be the hospital where Elvis was pronounced dead lay before them on the other side of Union Avenue, a big pile of rubble. Wonder when they're going to get that cleaned up, Hines said. What's it been, a year since they blew it up? Yeah, a year. Damn, Stevie. Time sure does fly when you're having fun. Hines was experiencing repeated nightmares about getting blown up. I was here for it, you know, Stevie Trent said. He had no use of his right arm, the nerves all severed there. The arm held to his side by a strap, and his left ankle joint was all calcified tissue. You believe this? There were people crying in the crowd. Big crowd, too, like he just died. Elvis, said Hines. Damn. The explosion he kept dreaming about was, of course, more memory than dream. It had caused nerve damage. You couldn't see where the wounds were on his body. He walked with a lurch like someone missing the necessary musculature to gain much momentum, but the real damage was interior. He suffered a deep fear of changing anything or moving from one spot to another. He had to overcome it with every step. Everything unnerved him, and he was always expecting the worst. Imagine dying on the toilet, Trent said. Let's go on home. See if Greer comes out. They waited. They could see the entrance of the bar and the light still shining in the window. Farther down, some young men were jiving along, shoving one another and picking up debris and throwing it. Let's go, said Hines. This ain't no hour to be out here. Worried about Greer. The sun was about to come spilling over the line of the horizon. We can check with him later today, Hines said. If I don't lay down, I'm going to fall down. You ever see him drink like that? I think the trouble got to him more than he was showing. I think he would have used that thing. Think he would have used that thing? The bat, Hines said. Greer? Oh, he'd have used it all right. Greer was Vietnam, an old guy with a long history, and he had seen a lot of things and done things. There was stuff he still felt guilty for. Trent and Hines had played by the rules. They told Greer that was how it was for them. They had an idealistic way of seeing it all, and they were not bitter and had served their country. They had volunteered. Greer told them he loved them with tears in his eyes. That was Greer. Look at you guys, he said, you're boys. You don't have a pot to piss in. I was just like you. I was exactly like you, except I didn't get blown up or shot. But it was different for you, Hines told him. You didn't have 9/11. You had riots and burning cities, man, and Johnson and the draft. I was just like you. Now, standing up at the corner looking down toward the bar, they saw the young men in the street stop and regard them. They were talking to one another, too far away to hear, 5 of them. Come on, Trent muttered, let's get. The young men started again, looking stealthy, spreading out. Hey, boys, Hines called to them. You don't want to mess with no war heroes. The tallest one was the one from earlier in the bar, the red-headed one. He wore his pants so far below his waist it looked funny. Hey, said Trent, you all right today? Ain't got no baseball bat. You trying to look like a brother, Hines said. Why do you think you got to do that? I wouldn't talk without a baseball bat. Hey, said Hines, don't mess with us, okay? We don't need a baseball bat. Really? Trent said, come on, boys, no trouble. You don't want any part of us, Hines said. This could be the worst night of your lives, really. The boys are moving to make a circle around the 2 of them. Got these friends, Hines, the red-headed one said. I see that, said Hines. Nice to have friends. I've got some, too. Where's your friend with a baseball bat? One of the others said, and they all jumped. One of them pulled Trent down, and another started kicking at him. The others, including the redhead, simply danced around Hines, hitting him and swiping at him with their caps. Living way beyond your means, the red-headed one said. Ain't that what they say? You got a big deficit, right? Hines pulled a small black pistol out of his coat pocket. Here's how come I don't need a bat, he said. From the ground, Trent said, I'm fine, Tommy, please. The other stood very still. The tall redhead backed away a little. He held his hands out. Hines, goddamn, okay, man. Okay, I just swiped at you with a hat, a baseball cap. No wood, right? Just a cloth cap. Tommy, said Trent. And in the same moment, the punks started to run. Hines crouched a little and fired twice. One of them fell and was still. The tall redhead went down but got up almost immediately and started running again. Hines fired once more, and the redhead tumbled, rolled, cried out, writhing in the street across from the church grounds there. I told you, Hines shouted. I told you not to mess with us. Jesus Christ, Trent grasped, rising. Down the street, Greer had come out of the bar and was heading toward them. What the hell, he said, approaching. Jesus Christ. They stood there. The street looked deserted. The wind moved the red-headed one's hair. Greer went to him and then to the other. He came back, wringing his hands and shivering. God damn. Trent sobbed. Tommy, Jesus, Jesus, oh, Jesus, Tommy. Hines was looking at his own hand holding the pistol. I didn't fire one shot over there, he said. Had a big .45 automatic the whole time. Not one shot. I worked in an office. What do we do? Trent asked. We got to call the police, Greer said. Jesus Christ almighty. Fuck. Trent drew his arm across his face. Oh, fuck me, fuck. Hines let his hand fall to his side. I wasn't even really mad at them. The other 2 stared at him. It had been something like a contest, target practice, see if he could hit them on the run, no feeling in it. They didn't even respect us enough to rob us, he heard himself say. Stop it, Trent said. What the hell did you bring that goddamn thing with you for? Isn't that the strangest thing, Hines told him. I didn't know I had it until we walked into the bar. Cars were pulling over now. Someone got out and began talking on a cell phone. A crowd had begun to gather, and there were sirens. A few moments later, Hines handed a uniformed policeman the pistol. A cop he recognized from night court handcuffed him. Trent stood nearby, crying. Greer was answering questions about the night. Hines said, "I'm sorry, Greer, I don't know, man." Somebody put one hand on the back of his head, pushing down as they made him get into the back seat of a cop car. He sat there, his hands in the cuffs, making it impossible to lean back, and looked out at Stevie, Trent, and Greer and at the people standing around. Beyond them was the ruin of the hospital where Elvis had died. It could be somewhere in Iraq. Someone had covered the bodies. The lights were pulsing all around, and the sun was up, burning through the haze. The door closed on him. "I wasn't even particularly mad at them," he said. Hines reflected again that he hadn't known he had the pistol with him, and again about the fact that he had never shot at anything in the shattered country where he had served, where he had been good and had tried as much as possible under the circumstances to be helpful and kind. Thank you. I was asked to, I was in Ireland, in Belfast, and I was asked to write something about Veterans Day. And so overnight I wrote this, or a version of this.
Overnight?
And because I'd been asked to. And I mean, it's been since revised and worked over and stuff, but that's basically what happened.
Wow, who wants to go after that? I have some questions, and of course we can open it up for Q&A as well. But first off, in addition to teaching students at Chapman and other universities over the years, you have spent decades giving back to the community through that community workshop that I mentioned that's totally free for people to participate in. It's changed many people's life trajectories, myself included. What is it about the act of teaching creative writing that informs or influences the act of creative writing for you? And then what is the role of a writing community?
I think the best thing I can say about it, and the thing that is most certainly true, is that teaching creative writing, if you can manage to keep this in mind, is always about encouragement. And to say, yeah, you can do it, just keep going, keep going. And it's easy to do. Teaching in the Chapman workshop, I get 100 applications, and I read them, and I get to pick the 10 best. And Candice was one of the best. And I knew she had everything she needed. She had the talent, and talent is not hard to see. I'll give you 2 lines. One of them has talent, and the other one doesn't. Ready? No kidding, I'm going to go back to an old, cheap bestseller that's still selling. Ready? Scarlett O'Hara was not beautiful, but men seldom realized it when captured by her charm as the Reese twins were. Now here's a bad one. Jack Johnson's eyes skyrocketed shut. And you go, what? What the hell are you talking about? Dawn came early to Auschwitz, but Jacob didn't mind. He was a morning person. No talent. Think of it, how bad that is. It's so bad, it hurts. Anyway, teaching writing is about encouraging, but also it's like that free workshop I teach is an indulgence for me because I get to choose. Everyone in the room can write, and they all become my friends. And I got a great number of amazing people who count me among their friends. And a lot of it has to do with that. And the other thing is you end up teaching yourself. There's an old thing about how do I know what I think until I see what I say. I was sitting in a bar with a student. He was saying, I had started a story, a man picking up a female hitchhiker, and they go in, a woman, and they go into the as if a female hitchhiker would be anything else. Picked up a female hitchhiker, a monkey. Anyway, this woman, and she pulls out a pistol and shoots a guy in the diner in his presence. And I put the story aside, going, I've been watching too much television. Then I'm in a bar talking to a student, a good student, saying, you got to follow your subconscious. Whatever occurs to you, you got to follow it. And a voice in my head said, why don't you go home and follow your own advice, idiot? You know. So it's a back and forth like that is invigorating.
Yeah, so you mentioned encouragement. One of the things that you're known for in your writing community is the advice that you dispense both in person and in a rather beloved series of Facebook craft notes that you post, which coincidentally we've all been begging you to put into a book for years now. That advice includes how to react when somebody is, let's say, critical of your work, or when that seed of doubt kind of comes in and paralyzes you. What advice can you give the writers in the room about the need to keep doing the work in such moments? Totally not asking for a friend now.
Keeping it just as, if I quit, they win. And the other thing is, I've had a couple of opportunities. A guy at a review, I won't say the name of it, the Kenyan Review, sent me a rejection slip that said, your story lacks staying power, we think. And a year later, my first novel was published, and it was a Book of the Month Club choice, and was in Time magazine. And I get a letter from this guy, apparently not remembering, and he said, we'd love to see any stories that you have. And I Xeroxed that rejection slip and sent it to him with my notes saying, your magazine lacks staying power, we think. But the magazine is still around, so. But my only advice about that kind of thing is try as best you can to ignore it. Try not to think about it. Try to remember, you're a writer. It costs you everything, and there's 100 positive comments, and one person says one thing, and you spend days. Well, now what the hell is that all about? Wait, did I really do that? And there's a purpose for good criticism, which is, I think if you added something here, that might. But, a woman came up to me at a party and said, oh, Richard, I like parts of Take Me Back so much. And I wanted to say, oh, I like parts of your face. But I didn't. But my advice is just try to be, try not to let it hurt so much. Mm-hmm. Trust that every writer who ever lived, you know what? Keats's first book of poems, John Keats, no less, first book of poems. The editor of the Edinburgh Review said the chemist should return to his pots. Oh. Shelley wrote a beautiful poem in response to that. But that kind of thing, and nobody knows who the editor of the Edinburgh Review was. There's no statues to critics. And then I love Brendan Behan. You can think of these things. Brendan Behan says, the critic, he's like the eunuch in the palace. He's seen it done, but he can't do it himself. So, and he went into a critic had trashed one of his plays, and there was a bar right next door where they all gathered, and he went in, picked him up by his coat, knocked him down, and walked out. And he turned and said, that is my earned right. And he went out. So you can be violent too if you... You can get so much more from a critic with a smile and a gun than you will never get. That's a bad joke in these times, I'll tell you. I'm sorry, Candice.
Now I'd like to open it up for Q&A from our audience. If you have a question for Richard, please let us know, and I believe Suki will come around with a microphone, or otherwise, I have plenty of questions, but I want to give you a chance as well. Master Craftsman.
I really appreciate your dialogue, and I'm wondering if you have written plays or have thought about focusing on that genre.
Not really. I tried to write a play very early. Started to read it to my closest friend, the guy I was writing songs with, and he began to laugh on the second page, and it was a dark tragedy, this play, and I realized probably not meant to be a playwright. I've sometimes toyed with the idea, and I was paid to write a play version of my novel, The Last Good Time, and that's when I really found out. I don't really like it. I like sentences and making a play. And you know, my favorite all-time #1 champion writer is Shakespeare, and I love Shakespeare. I learn every time I read him. He's a university. And you can actually read Shakespeare and go around as an educated human being. You don't need math, the hell with it. That's what ought to go AI. But that's really why. I just never really felt. I tried screenwriting, and it's the same thing. I can't have sentences. I like to write leading up to what someone's going to say. So I probably wouldn't be very good at it. Hemingway was very good at dialogue, and he wrote one play, and it was dreadful. So.
Interesting.
Thanks, Suki. Did you ever have a story that you wanted to tell that was too painful to write?
No. Writing for me is, when I lost my twin brother in 2018, up to that time, writing had always been a discipline and something I loved to do, and so the discipline part was doing it even when I didn't feel like doing it. And after I lost Bobby, it became a refuge. So writing for me is exactly that, a refuge, a place to go where I'm so seldom writing about my experience. I write with it. In other words, by the time you're 11, you've experienced all the human emotions there are. A child crying over the loss of a doll is experiencing grief. And all the physiological stuff that goes on with grief is going on in that child, even though the object of it is something that makes us smile. But I'm almost entirely all the time making it up, because I'm a natural-born liar, is the way I used to say. When people teach me, what do you teach? I say, I teach lying. But my brother Bobby said it best, you're not writing about your experience, you're writing with it. And if painful experience is in there, because you're imagining so much, it's being transformed into something else. But I have a direct thing in the new book that's coming out. It's called A Memory and Sorrow, an Interval for Bobby. And it's an exact description of a thing that happened when we were in the Air Force, as well as I can remember it and recreate it. And that's the only thing I've ever written that is directly from my life. And that was sorrowful to write, but I also felt exhilarated to be able to say it. So, if you're making it up, you know, that's why I love that wonderful poet. I have dyslexia, and so names, but a great poet, helped me with this. She has a poem called Poetry, and the opening line is, I too dislike it. Does that ring a bell?
Let's see what Google says.
Anyway, at the very end, she says a line that I've been saying all these years. I'm making up imagined gardens that have real toads in them. I just love that. That's so beautiful. Marianne.
More.
There you go. Thanks, Candice. Marianne Moore. Now, you'd think I'd be able to remember that. I can do whole poems, large gouts of Shakespeare and others. How much time we have left?
Technically, we're 3 minutes over, but I know we have a few minutes of wiggle room. So do we have, yeah, perfect.
One of the things I love about your writing is the conversation, the back and forth between your characters. Now, what I need to know is, do your characters ever say things that you wish they hadn't said, that you'd like to shove back in their mouths?
No, all the time they say stuff I would never say. I mean, some of it, you know, I'm portraying times and stuff. And so there are ignorant people in places in my stories, and they say stuff that I would never say. I don't even think I said it when I was ignorant. But no, I got to let them say whatever they say. And the wonderful distinction with fiction and the dialogue in fiction, and Lisa showed me this. I was reading a thesis of a student. I said, listen to this dialogue, and I read this very kind of vague and dull back and forth, you know? And Lisa said, that's not dialogue, that's conversation. And I realized, yeah, that's the difference. I mean, dialogue is actually very, very carefully thought out, and where does this fall and how do, you know. But I've never had characters have surprised me. The woman who shot the guy in the diner surprised me. I put the story down. I went, what the hell is this? I was in bed with a cold. I thought maybe it was the cold.
Or the NyQuil.
Or the NyQuil. But you know, I grew up in the South, and I was blessed with a couple of what back then would be called, and not very kindly, moderate Southern parents who believed in, you know, desegregation and they were with the whole thing that is, you know, this 100-year late thing. And I don't think they disagree with me when I say that I firmly believe that if we can build 5 battleships, we can guarantee that every child of color born in this country is guaranteed an education at the college of his or her choice. And it's all up to them. It'll all be paid for, and we'll pay for it, just for the thousands, the millions of losses, lives and material, you know? So I don't think that growing up without them, I don't know, I don't know what I would have been. I was a little kid, but boy, it was impressed upon me early. And my father kept using the phrase, everybody one at a time. Each person one at a time. Which I didn't know the full import of it until I was much older. I was in my 20s before I realized what he was actually saying. Every single person is a universe, and they deserve your attention. One at a time. You don't group people. You don't put them into these monolithic masses of intention and will and all the rest of it, because everybody is a universe. Every single person